Look, no one's ever really taught us how to say a good speech, or at least write one, or how to structure it. And so what we find is that everyone just kind of sounds like everyone. But now the problem is everyone sucks. And our issue is that we might have a good speech idea with a good message, but we don't have a good enough structure to really make it good. So, what I have here is a speech structure which I've used to help me say a couple of speeches in front of 2,000 people a few times, win some public speaking competitions, and receive a few standing ovations here and there. And so it works, or it's kind of worked for me. So I recommend you give it a listen, try it out for yourself, and if it sucks, just go back to whatever was kind of working for you, I guess, in the start. So here it is. Story, rhetoric, no Churchill. What do I mean by that? So with all of my speeches, they always follow this exact structure. I always open it up with, no matter if it's an interview, like tell me a little bit about yourself, Luca, or if it's introduce yourself to the class, or if it's a formal speech in front of 2,000 people, or a public speaking competition finale, or if it's an unprepared speech where they give me a random topic like the grass isn't always greener on the other side. I always open it up with the story. Stories are power. Stories are king, my guy or my girl. They are good. And that looks more of like a jester hat. So it's like a clown and it does a crown, but you get the idea. So stories of power. Why are they powerful? Because they allow you to connect to your person. They allow you to step away from the crowd and just differentiate and be authentic and be your own and be your own fingerprint, your own copy. No one can copy your story because it's not theirs, it's yours. No one can say it as well as you because it's not as real coming from them as it is first person from you, from your experience, from your emotion. So stories are good, stories are effective. That's what connects humans, it's what adds humor, it's what breaks patterns, it's what's authentic, it's what's memorable. Use a story in a nutshell, try figure it out. I've made a storytelling cheat sheet, link in the description. I've put a lot of effort into it. I recommend you check it out because it's actually pretty decent, unbiased opinion. It's a lot of information from Matthew Dix's book, Story Worthy, and a lot of my experience just summed up into a couple of pages on a Google Doc. Check that out if you want. If not, no hard feelings. Stories work. Essentially, with storytelling, there's three things to it, which three is pushing it. It's not that complicated. People try and overcomplicate it. I'm almost oversimplifying it to an extent, but you don't need all these techniques. You don't need all these YouTube videos, all these TED Talks, all these lectures, all these books and podcasts and all this bull crap, blah, blah, blah stuff. You only need one character. Lucky for you, it's already figured out because it's you. You are the character saying a personal story. Always keep it personal. That's real. You need one transformation. Here's a big ass mountain. There's a person there and a person there. The person on that side always has to be different to the person on the end. So, fat to fit, lead to gold, smart or dumb to smart. There always has to be some transformation in your story, okay? And there always has to be one realization or lesson learned at the end of it. So, in that moment, I realized it wasn't about letting go of my big brother, but it was never getting the chance to say goodbye. In that moment, I realized love wasn't this grand firework that lights up the sky. Love was this tiny little candle that lights up your heart. In that moment, I realized I didn't like watching soccer with my dad, but I liked spending quality time with him. Time where I didn't have to live up to be someone I'm not. Time where I didn't have to live up to someone's expectations. Time where I could just be me. So I literally say that exact same line at the end of all of my stories. In that moment, I realized that. That's how you end it. And what we can do, an important principle in our stories to bind all of these three components together, is a simple formula. The equation is, I was going to say something quite vulgar and inappropriate, would have been funny to me and my buddies, but we're idiots, so not cool. The formula is called laugh, 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 cry. Okay, laugh, 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 cry formula. And what this is essentially we want to make if it's a 5-minute story, the first 4 minutes are very, very funny. The last minute, that's where the sadness comes. Okay, save all the sad, deep, transformative, real world stuff for the end. And everything else is funny. Hey guys, so you want to be warm, you want to be smiling, you want to be energetic. I wake up that morning with one thing on my mind. I'm going to school that day with a teddy bear in my backpack, and I'm going to ask the girl I like to be my Valentine. And so it's all warm, it's all bubbly, it's all funny. And at the end, that's where you get into the deep stuff. Now that my big brother is no longer with us, he's very much alive. We just continue to live far apart. I realized that Winston Churchill's quote. Does that make sense? So we want to get, then we can always go back, and then it gets deep. Oh, my brother's dead. Psych. We want to ease the tension with some more laughter. Okay, so before that, you first want to make them laugh a couple of times. Always save the deep, sad realization at the end. I have notes explaining that better. I have videos explaining that better. This video is just going to be about the structure. So that's the components of a story in a nutshell. Stories are important. Once we have a story, let's move on. Then we move over to, then we move over, girl come over, trying to make a Noma, 4-leaf clover. It's kind of cold outside, need pull over. Not pull over. The car broken, pull over. Okay, when I'm on the beat, you know it's over. I'm so rich, I don't even drive a car because I got me a chauffeur. Okay, so what is rhetoric? We could put a Roman rhetoric above it because that's what it is. That's where it comes from. That's what I'm referring to. Essentially, what Roman rhetoric is an art form of writing persuasively. Okay, it's all about persuasive writing. Many influential people used it. Shakespeare, Martin Luther King, the greatest minds, Katy Perry, they all use it. So here's 3 techniques you can go and use and apply to your story to make it powerful, amazing, captivating, charming, Martin Luther King Jr.-esque. So there's 3 techniques. We don't need everything. These are the most bang for your buck, which will really just completely elevate your speaking game. And so once we have our story and our deep realization at the end, from that realization, we can go and transition into our science, into our message, into our, here's the study I found. Oh, here's my actual opinion, and here's my take on this topic. Here's why I don't think AI is actually that bad. So as soon as we go and start arguing, making arguments, presenting information, all these things, it's kind of boring. The story, luckily, is naturally fun, energetic, and breaks patterns. But once we actually have to say some grown-up words, put our tie on, that can get boring. So we use Roman rhetoric to add some spice, some life, and actually make it eloquent. Does that make sense? So the first technique we have here, it's a little stock market here. It is called climax. And what you want to know with the climax is it's Adidas, bro. He ain't Nike. It's always 3 groups of 3, okay? So no, climax actually doesn't drop, does it? It just builds up to a peak point, whatever. So with the climax is we're essentially saying 3 things. We always want to list things in groups of 3 adjectives. 3 is a trifecta, a trilogy. It's a triangle. It's complete. It just works, okay? The atom, the proton, the neutron, the electron, the earth, the water, the air. What else? The trilogy in Christianity: Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. I'm thinking of a lyric from a song, whatever. So it's groups of 3 everywhere. It's just very pleasing to our ear. The Father, the Mother, the Child. It's almost like it's a nuclear component to our being, our existence. That's essentially where the group of 3 comes from, according to Roman rhetoric. So instead of just saying, oh, it was a nice and sunny day, it was a nice, sunny and jovial day. Instead of just saying, oh, it was a nice day, instead of just saying it was a pretty entertaining YouTube video, it was entertaining, memorable, and captivating YouTube video. So we always want to use 3 adjectives, 3 points, or 3 arguments, or 3 things, okay? Here's why I want to be a doctor when I grow up. I want to save people's lives. I want to change the world. And that's about it. Thanks. No, no, no. I want to change people's lives. I want to change the world. But above all, I want to change America. You know what I'm saying? So that's what we're going for. Groups of three, okay? And you always want to save the best, strongest point for last. So essentially, we're leading up from good to better to best. Change lives, change whatever, people, whatever I said, change, I don't know. What did I say? Change people, change lives, change America. But above all, I want to change America. You know what I'm saying? So that's what climax is. And you can use that little key line there, but above all. That just highlights and brings even more focus and attention to that third strongest point we have. Luca, why do you want the viewer? What do you want the viewer to get from this video? I want the viewer to get from this video that yes, public speaking is theory based, but but getting good is all about practice. I want them to get that the structure of a speech is essentially just story rhetoric and just one little note to mention on conclusion, but above all, I want them to subscribe. Ha ha ha. So that's what it looks like. But above all, whatever. Okay, climax, group of three, good, better, best, but above all, best. Okay. And then we have a fire and an ice cube here. So that would be something called antithesis. Antithesis, opposite ideas, contrasting ideas. It's everywhere. I think, you know, Katy Perry's song, because you're hot, then you're cold, you're yes, then you're no, you're in, then you're out, you're up, then you're not. It's everywhere, okay? Antithesis is very, very powerful. I was freestyling with a buddy today, for example. My bars weren't even that good, but I was saying stuff like, everybody want to go to heaven, but nobody want to die. Nobody want to walk, but everybody want to fly. Everybody want to laugh, but nobody want to cry. And you know, it just sounds like, amen. Like, damn, that's this guy deep, bruh. You deep for a white boy, fool. But it's not that deep. I'm just rhyming laugh with cry and whatever with whatever, walk and fly or whatever. But it's just because it's an antithesis. They almost like, here's water and here, or here's fire and here's ice. They are opposites, but they're yin and yang. They kind of complement each other. So when you put these two things together, it just makes this beautiful, perfect, seamless connection. And when people see that, hear that, they acknowledge it. And when you put it like this, it makes sense. They are meant to intertwine like that. So when we can have an antithesis throughout our information that we say, it adds a bit of life to it. Next up, just a bunch of copy-pasted people. That is called anaphora. Anaphora. All that is just a big word, a cool, fancy Greek word for repetition. So, yes, we want to repeat things in groups of threes, but if we look at Martin Luther King's speech, I have a dream. He said that phrase, that, you know, that, what's the word? Okay, who cares? He said that phrase about 8 times, all right? That's quite a lot of times to say the exact same sentence throughout a speech. I have a dream, I have a dream, I have a dream. If we want people to remember something, you simply just repeat it. Subscribe, subscribe, subscribe. Smash like and subscribe, smash like and subscribe, smash like and subscribe. Buy merch, buy merch, buy merch. That's what all these YouTubers are saying in these videos. And these kids are buying it. Yo guys, here's my Fortnite V-Bucks code. Please buy when you go and buy V-Bucks. And they say that in every single video, and it works. And they get some bang from it from these people because it works. Repetition, it kind of just gets engraved in the people's speech, in the people's memory. And it doesn't hurt to just go and repeat some stuff every now and then. So why do I want to be a doctor? I want to be a doctor for the good of mankind. I want to be a doctor because I am kind. But above all, I want to be a doctor for those who can't. Does that make sense? So I'm repeating the phrase, I want to be a doctor. I could have just said, I want to be a doctor because I want the money, I want the girls, and I want the status. No. I want to be a doctor because I want the money. I want to be a doctor because I want the girls. I want to be a doctor because I want the status. So I'm repeating, I want to be a doctor there. And that just draws attention to, I want to be a doctor. And anaphora repetition is everywhere in nature. We look at the Fibonacci sequence, a shell, we cut up some grass, it looks like that on the inside. It's everywhere. Repetition is everywhere, from grass to trees to patterns in nature. So when people hear repetition, it's kind of just, they recognize this pattern which they're so used to, and it's very, very pleasing to the ear, almost musical. It's a pleasant sensation when you pick up on this repetition, this pattern. So you want to go and try and, stimulate that positive sensation to the audience's ear. And then we move over to the conclusion. Why did I have a big Churchill sign? Am I anti-Churchill? No. But many quotes come from Winston Churchill, right? Ask not what your country can. No, I'm kidding. That's JFK. There's a common joke where, like, if you don't know what a quote is, you can just attribute it to Winston Churchill, and most people will probably agree. I don't know. He's a cool guy. He said a bunch of stuff. But what's the point of just going and saying someone else's quote? That's pretty lame. Everyone does that. So what we want to do is we want to make our own quotable words. Be profound. Be our own thinker. Be our own philosopher. And that might raise the point. Luca, how big is your ego that you think you can say better words than the great Nelson Mandela, and the great Mahatma Gandhi, and the great Winston Churchill? I can probably say better words for my speech in the context of my entire speech because I know it and I wrote it and I know what I want to say. Does that make sense? So it's like we don't have to go and take their words and put them in our mouth just because they spat some bars, every now and then a few years back. We're on the come up. We're the new rappers in the street, boy. So let's make up our own quote. Exactly. How do we do that? We want to use another rhetorical device from Roman rhetoric, very, very powerful, called chiasmus. If you know much about biology, which I don't know too much about yet, when chromosomes overlap, they overlap and they share genetic material, right? But the point where they touch and cross and share that DNA, that point of intersection is called a chiasma. But in a nutshell, what does that look like? It just looks like an overlap like that, or chiasmata or something. So this overlap is a lot what our sentence will look like. What a chiasmus is ask not what your country can do for you, but ask what you can do for your country. Does that make sense? Don't climb life's mountains for the world to see you, but for you to see the world. And you can see that crossing over just like that. That's powerful. That's how you can make your own quotes, your own lines, your own powerful lines and memorable bars and whatever you like with that. And that's pretty cool. That's the power of rhetoric. That's the power of storytelling. That's the power of structuring it in a way which actually works and which is developed by people a lot smarter than you and I. I'm just taking this, I've applied it, and I've seen it work, so now I'm just giving you the exact same opportunity that I had. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask me in the comments or check the link in the description because I can give you some free personalized advice, and hope you got some insight from this. Good luck and take care.